Welcome to the Envision Rise podcast. I'm your host, Stacey Hagerty, Vice President of Equity and Inclusion for Envision Rise. Joining us as our first guest for season 4 is Ryan Morrison. Ryan is an agency recruiter, and we're going to talk today about talent acquisition and recruiting and filling all of those roles that you got sitting there waiting for the perfect person. Ryan, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, great to be here.
Let's start with the easy stuff. Now, you and I have known each other for quite some time. We used to work together in past careers. But since none of our listeners have had the opportunity to get to meet you before, why don't you share a little about yourself?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so I live in the Chicago suburbs. I'm in the western suburbs, about 30, 40 minutes from downtown Chicago. Have lived in this area long time, since the 1980s. Grew up here really as a kid. And yeah, I've had a couple of different careers since I finished my undergrad 30 years ago. Plus. But yeah, I've had some various and interesting careers. I worked for the Chicago Park District for a while, long ago. I've been in marketing, and Stacey mentioned that too. We worked together. I was in, higher education, post-secondary education, and career services and alumni relations for probably about 5 or 6 years. But for the last 8 years, coming up in April, I have essentially been doing the same work in the Chicago market, a little bit outside of Chicago as well, but primarily this is my market. And that is, I am a direct hire, full desk agency recruiter. So essentially what that means is I build relationships with companies, finding out what they need talent wise from a finance and accounting perspective. And then B, I go recruit on those roles that they need filled. And I work with the team at my company as an agency recruiter. They do exactly what I do. We collaborate every day. So I hope that was helpful.
That was very helpful.
Okay, cool.
And also on the side, a bassist for a band. Love that.
Oh, yeah.
Good to have
Yeah. So
hobbies.
my career, or I should say maybe a second career. Yeah, I'm a musician. I'm a bassist. I've been playing bass guitar, electric bass for 30 odd years. Play a little guitar, but I also sing a lot. I'm bassist and singer in a rock band, but I'm also a classical singer, and I've done some opera, some musicals. I get church gigs here and there. Christmas is always a busy time, was a busy time this season too. My wife is also a singer. She's a soprano. I'm a bass. So our kids get it a lot around here, to their detriment, I think, maybe. But yeah, my wife and I have been married 15 years, have a 14-year-old daughter, 11-year-old son. So yeah, pretty busy. Yeah. Yeah.
Let's start talking about the whole reason that we're here is how's it looking out there in employment world? We've got really low unemployment. What I hear from clients time is we don't have enough candidates to fill the roles, at least not in their minds. So what are you seeing? Are you seeing there are a lot of roles going unfilled for long periods of time? What's happening?
So again, finance and accounting doesn't get a lot of the press per se, like IT, right? IT. And so you hear a lot more, I think, in general in the economy about, Google laying off, or, you just kind of go through it, not necessarily Google, but bigger companies. Citibank, I think, was a recent one, laying off. And they often say IT. So I can't really speak to that. And those are the headline grabbers, right? More the technical stuff. But in finance and accounting and in the Chicago market, what I would say is my experience is the market is still very good for job seekers, very good. Unemployment, yes, is very low. I think that last year, 23, slowed down to an extent in terms of hiring, and really in terms of the hiring process. So what I did not get from a lot of my clients, and I should back up a little too, most of my clients that I work with, companies that I support, right? And this is very generally speaking, about a $1 to $10 billion revenue range. A lot of these companies are, publicly traded, but not all of them. Some are privately held, private equity backed. So they are larger companies. They're just not giant companies that most people have heard of, right? So with my client base, yes, there was plenty, still a lot of hiring going on, but what happened was the process slowed down, right? I think also the hiring in terms of numbers was less than in 22 and in 21. I think there was some overhiring coming out of that first year of the pandemic. And you see this a lot in IT too, that you're just kind of reading through headlines. But to answer your question, is the hiring is still good, just the process has slowed down. And so that is, for a job seeker, frustrating, to say the least. I hope that helped a little bit. And again, this is
Yeah.
anecdotal. This is what I see here. Yeah.
Yep. And I think what you're talking about is what's being seen nationwide. That's what I'm hearing. And I know the conventional wisdom is hire slow, fire fast.
Right.
But there's a difference between making good decisions and dragging out a process for no reason. Let's talk a little bit about how the process starts for most job seekers. And that may be answering an ad on Indeed or a company website, and they ask you to upload your resume. And then what do? They turn around and say, please enter in all the information from your resume.
Right. Right.
They ask you to attach a cover letter, and then they ask you to enter that cover letter into a text box. At one point in my life, I was filling out paper applications and mailing in a paper resume.
I
I'm
was
not
there too.
100% convinced that technology has made the job hunting process easier for job seekers, but I think it's probably made it a little bit easier for the companies that are hiring.
Sure. I mean, it really is kind of a dual edged thing for job seekers, right? And so, contextually, too, I would say that most of the candidates that I recruit are most of them are passive job seekers. The professional accounting and finance people who, when I talk to them, generally are not applying to jobs, generally speaking, right? They're like, I'm too busy. I'm working 60 hours or whatever a week. I need your help. I'd like to find a different situation, but I don't have time to go on there and upload a resume and then retype everything. That's just, I don't want to be doing that at midnight. So there is a convenience factor from what you shared too, Stacy, because I was there 2 decades ago. Like, yes, mailing in resumes, and getting those manila, envelopes and, you know, so it is better, but I think you're right. It favors, in general, it favors the company, right? I think it
Mhm.
is that way. I will also just kind of put an addendum in this, and something I do a lot too with my own clients, with my companies that I work with, but other clients that I'm just kind of trying to familiarize myself with. I'll go to their website. I'll inevitably go to their career page, see if they've got things posted potentially that I might be able to be of assistance on, right? But I will tell you, one of the things that if I'm a job seeker is really frustrating is when a company has a career page, a jobs page, however you want to call it, right? Whatever, but you have to find it. It's not easily found. You think it would be or should be, but even when you find it, then it's gummed up with a lot of content, and you got to sift through all of this to eventually find out what are the jobs that are actually posted there, and then go through the hoops of applying. So to your point, yeah, I think it does generally favor the company, right? Versus the job seeker. It can be frustrating. I will say that I do have some clients, though, that do a magnificent job of making it very easy for a job seeker. The process and all of that is, but I think by and large, it's not that easy, right? For a job seeker. Yeah.
Let's talk about how long it is taking from initial contact of, hey, we'd like to interview you, to the point where a job seeker is actually getting an offer letter. And how can companies do a better job of streamlining that without, of course, there's no expectation that a company interviews somebody today and gives them an offer tomorrow. That's great if that happens because they know they found the perfect person.
Mm-hmm.
But more likely than not, it's a multi-step process. But what we're seeing now, and I think it's in response to what used to be called job hopping, and I don't know that that's a correct term anymore,
Right.
but they're trying to find employees that they think are going to stay, that they think
Right.
will retain.
Mm-hmm.
And in doing so, they've drawn out the interview process to the point where it's almost comical that you've got a phone interview, a video interview, you come in for a panel interview, and then you submit a work sample, and then they want you to do a little project, and then you've got to do a background check. Maybe you've got to take a couple of personality tests and all those kinds of things. And then you're looking at 4 months later,
Right.
and a lot of times candidates are going to be off the market at that point. So, what are you seeing that organizations are doing that are causing them to lose out on good candidates? And what can they be doing differently?
Yeah. I call myself agency recruiter. What I am ultimately is recruiter and a consultant in both ways, talking to candidates about, like you talk about job hopping. Let's talk about those reasons, right? And I get a lot of reasons why on the client side, but this is more to your question, right? When I do an intake call on a new job, company says they need a controller. Okay, cool. Tell me about that, right? I really want to know everything I can know about the role. What is somebody in there now? Are you firing somebody? That happens sometimes, right? They'll do it
Mhm.
confidentially. The role's been open 4 months. Oh, really? Who's doing the work, right? And then eventually I start, right, get into the process of the interview process. Okay, tell me about that. Who's screening the resumes? Who's making that initial contact out if you find somebody on paper that looks okay? And then what happens from there? Tell me about that. So, part of my job, frankly, is to try and help companies solve these issues in streamlining the interview process, right? I mean, I'm not always successful to get them to do this, but I'm trying to make them see, I'm trying to really snuff out, is this a priority hire? And if it is, tell me about how you're going to get there and fill that seat. Because, Stacy, to your point, yeah, if it's like assessment this and, 4 steps here, and then, oh, by the way, even after they meet with the CFO, then they've got to have lunch when the CEO's available. Maybe it's in 3 weeks. The best relationships I have with companies are a dialogue with the hiring manager. That person's going to feel the pain the most, right? But also with their HR, whoever that talent acquisition person, because yeah, we're trying to accomplish something. And whether it's me helping place a candidate with them or me just helping them fill the role, maybe they'll find it internally, maybe they'll, however, because again, what I trade in is professional accounting and finance. It is still a competitive market. I tell them that all the time. Even if their process is slow, not through any fault of their own, maybe there's some things that are going on. I still tell them that, but I really work with them to try to, yeah, hey, why does it have to be 4 steps? Can you consolidate this? I went through this over Christmas too with a client when they said, well, we'll interview before Christmas and then there's a 2 week or week and a half break and then we'll start it up again if we like that individual. I'm like, why don't we just wait? Because you may lose that individual because there are other companies that are willing to figure it out. They have backup plans if, A, B, and C are out through between Christmas and New Year's, right? Some companies work very diligently to make sure there is backup, right? And then there's others that I just talked about where they just push it out, kick the can for 2 weeks. I'm like, wow. So I know I'm giving you kind of a long answer, but I do really try to help from the initial resume, let's say, hitting their desk to an offer, try to shorten that time frame. And again, for me, it's also asking the right questions about and figuring out, is this a priority hire? Because from my desk too, I need to figure out, I have a team, we have 35 open recs, right? Like, what's a priority? So if that makes sense, there, that's part of my business. So I hope that helps. But I do try and really help people. Why is the assessment important? Tell me about the
Mhm.
assessment. Well, we've always done it this way. Oh, okay. Well, there are other companies that are not, and they once did it that way, and now they've decided we'll ask the questions in the interview. We'll dispense with these assessments. Good for you. That's the way it should be. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious about the organizations that still do those kind of personality assessments or
Yeah.
anything like that. And are they really seeing so much of a difference in employee retention that
Hmm.
it's worth passing up good candidates that would be an excellent addition to your team? What would you recommend if you could
Hmm.
build the hiring process for an organization? What would it look like?
Well, I would have most of the key individuals involved, meaning the hiring manager, the talent acquisition person. It could be a director, if it's a smaller company, if it's a bigger company, just somebody that is uniquely familiar with the role, working with that hiring manager, and then anybody else who needs to be involved. So that could be the hiring manager's peer. Like, let's say, you've got the controller interviewing for a senior accounting role. Well, maybe that controller wants to bring in, a finance manager that she or he, works with a lot. And so this individual might have some of this collaboration, trying to get all the players involved as closely as possible. Now, in terms of the process, rather than, as I was saying, we'll do an interview this week and then the following week and then 2 weeks from now and all that jazz. So try to get the stakeholders involved sooner to make it a more efficient and actually a better experience for the job seeker, right? I understand that a very few processes would only involve a 1 step. I've had a couple of those. That's always cool. I realize it's not always feasible. So ask yourself, Miss CFO, do you really feel like 4 steps is necessary? Can you get that to 3 or 3 to 2, right? That kind of stuff. So yes, that if I was designing hiring processes, that's a big thing I would do.
Are there things that job seekers can do to help move the process along. Obviously, as a job seeker, you don't have the ability to move a company's process along, but are there things that a job seeker can do differently or can do better that would bring their resume to the top of that list talent acquisition has in their
Mhm.
profession? What are some things that people who are currently looking for a new role can be doing?
Yeah, that's a terrific question. So, one thing I'd say is definitely do not think your resume is just like the Declaration of Independence. It is what it is. It's set this way. It can't be changed, or the Constitution, or however you want to call it. No, really, you should be looking for, and that's a great point. You should be looking for when you're reviewing through a job description, looking like combing through your resume very carefully to say, all right, are there keywords in that job description that I have, right? The skill sets, but that are not currently on my resume. And if the answer is yes, then you need to affect that. You need to update your resume to get those keywords, those key phrases from that job description into your resume. Don't lie about it. Don't fluff it, because it'll come up in an interview if you don't have that skill set. But if you do, yes, you absolutely need to do that, as painstaking as that is. And especially if you're not working, right? You would like to shotgun out your resume to, 50 companies in a week and hope for something. That's not a good approach, but I get the thought behind it. I need work. I need money, right? But really, yeah. And again, from where I sit working with professionals, that's what I tell them then. And I do the same thing with them. I'm like, you guys are busy. All right, look, here's a job. Do you have this skill set right now? Oh, yeah, Ryan, it's not on your resume. Tell me what you do. I'll even put it in there for you, right? To make you stand out, to make it stand out. So, because a job seeker uploads a resume into some database with a company, and now you're basically at the mercy of that applicant tracking system, right? It's basically just the little cop in the machine. It's looking for keywords, is what it's doing. And it's
Mhm.
not really designed. That's another point too. They're not really designed to bring people in. They're really mainly designed to kick people out. And then by default, who's the last man or woman standing that's got the most amount of relevant skill sets experience? I don't think it's very, very good. But unfortunately, that's the reality, right? So I would encourage any job seeker, just very carefully look at your resume, look at the job you're applying to, and make sure it aligns as closely as possible. Yeah. That's one thing that could get you, like you said, to the top of the pile, or at least take a better shot at it. Yeah.
At
Yeah.
least it won't screen you out with the technology. The keywords piece of it is so important. I know people who have been job hunting for months and months and have gotten no responses, no
Right.
positive responses anyway from potential employers. And in sitting and looking at their resume and realizing that, oh gosh, okay, this job description is asking for these 5 things, and you only mention one of those skills on your resume, even though you've done it, you've
Hmm.
got the other 4 skills that they're asking for, but if it's not there on your resume, you're never going to humanize on it. And
Yeah.
without a human looking at it, there's no way for somebody to parse that, oh, well, I know this kind of role,
Hmm.
this person would have had to do these things anyway, and be able to draw those conclusions that AI and technology are simply not drawing at this point. When you're
Yeah.
working
Yeah.
with companies, is there, I'm assuming almost all of them are using technology in some way, shape, or form to help screen out the initial flood of 700 resumes. Is that pretty is that pretty
Oh,
common, I would
absolutely.
think?
For
Okay.
sure. So a very common comment or response that I get from hiring managers, and I'm going to say this nicely because some companies do, a talent acquisition does a great job, and then there's others that are lacking. But I get this a lot where, you have to understand, as a third party recruiter, what I am, right? Agency recruiter. If a company's coming to me, that means internally they're not getting what they need, right? And
Mhm.
so that's something I get a lot from a hiring manager. Oh my gosh, we have all these resumes coming in. Talent acquisitions, they're getting inundated with a lot of garbage. And then when they send me something, it's not what I need. They think it says accounting on it. So most of these companies, again, that I work with, they have this applicant tracking system. That's the magic catch-all phrase for, here's where your resume goes, you know, good luck. And then talent acquisition, somebody on the other end, gets a notification of a new resume, a new
Mhm.
application to go through, that kind of stuff. Some times I'm referred to smaller companies. I shared with you a little earlier kind of the size of the companies I
Mhm.
generally work with, right? But I have worked with smaller companies. They don't have a career page. Most of them have websites. They don't always have a career page on there. And sometimes a hiring manager, you know, is really at the mercy of word of mouth. Like it's same thing. Like, oh, Ryan, I did get 50 resumes. I don't have time for this. Can you help me out? That kind of stuff. So I'll share this to you, Stacey. I've got a job posting on LinkedIn, right? Maybe it's I'm just
Mhm.
trying to senior accountant with a client. So I'll post something. Probably 1 in 10 of resumes that I get are even worth my attention.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is really a human's not going to be looking at a resume until hiring manager or they go to an agency recruiter like yourself to actually look at it, that the technology is going to take care of it up until that point.
Yeah, exactly. Just as a sidebar, because you asked a question ago about what can a job seeker do to
Mhm.
maybe affect a conversation, right? To get to that top of that pile, to get read, and then to have somebody reach out. And this is just kind of the broader job search perspective is, and again, I'm putting this anecdotally, right? I work with professional accounting and finance folks, but I tell them the same thing. I'm like, well, you definitely want to build out your network. You want to be networking as much as possible. I don't care what field you're in. You really need to have contacts you're checking in with, at least a couple of times a year. LinkedIn is still, although there's been, some things that are posted there that seem less than professional, it's still the platform, right?
Mhm.
And I tell people, connect with as many people as you can, talk to recruiters. Not every recruiter is going to be able to help you directly, but at least you're building out your network. And I say, there is no harm in trying to reach out if you can pinpoint who that hiring manager likely is at a company that you saw a job or heard a job for that company. Connect with
Mhm.
them on LinkedIn. And that takes a little bit of courage, I suppose, right? But it can be a way to try and at least, you know, knock on the door. Yeah. As opposed to just filling out applications. You
Mhm.
should be filling out applications, time consuming and as that can be sometimes, but that's not the only thing you should be doing as a job
Mhm.
seeker.
Now, the other piece of this, and you and I had a conversation about this earlier, is from your perspective as an agency recruiter, you get somebody hired, you've got that right pair of company and applicant, and they get
Yeah.
hired. And then are you done with them?
Oh, no. Again, I've been at this now for about 8 years. And even going back to the first people I've helped place in my career, I still check in with them 8 years on, at least a holiday email,
Mhm.
if not an out and out call or, whatever. How are things going for you? My gosh, I can't believe the year's over, etc. But crucially, what you just talked about, when you have helped a job seeker get that career, that role, that next job, you've helped place them there, right? And I tell people it's flattering to hear. It's really wonderful to hear, frankly, because I'm in the business to help shape and change lives for the better from a career perspective, right? So I do get this from time to time, Ryan, and I get this around the holidays. It's been terrific. Thank you again. 2, 3 years later, but it is a relationship building thing that I do, and good
Mhm.
recruiters should be looking at it that way. And so, to your question, in that immediate time of onboarding. And really, from the time they've accepted it, oh my God, Ryan, thank you. Yes, I accept. Oh, I can't wait to start. I got to give 2 weeks notice. A lot of activities going on now, right? You got background checks. You've got to resign at your current company, right? I take them through that. That can be stressful to do for people. And so I take them through that. But when they start, it's so critical that, and I tell all of them, everybody I've helped is, I will be checking in with you periodically. I will be checking in with the company periodically, right? Why? I want to know that you are getting the resources, right? The training, the resources, the mentorship, however you define it, to have you set up for success long term in this role, right? I want to know you're happy. I want to know, how is the chemistry, the team? Is the team treating you like you thought it would through the interview process, or is it a 180 from what you went through? They said
Mhm.
one thing, it's now this, right? Fortunately, again, it all kind of comes back to the legwork that I do way in the beginning of all of this stuff. It should not be a surprise. It should be positive, and I would say overwhelmingly it has been. So no, I don't stop checking in with them. I think it's not every day, hey, how's it going, how's it going? No, but it's routine, in those first 3 or 4 months, every few weeks for sure, checking in and just
Excellent.
And not all recruiters do that. I get this a lot
Mhm.
with new candidates. Hey, Ryan, thanks for taking my call. I've been at my role for 4 months. It is not what it was advertised to be. I don't want to run out the door, but it's a toxic environment. Can you help me? Sure. And the first thing I say is, how did you get the role? And if they tell me a recruiter, an agency recruiter, whatever, helped me get it, first question I ask them is, have you talked to that person? Half the time they say yeah, which is great to hear. And then I
Mhm.
listen to what they tell me. But half the time it's, well, I tried to reach out and I've got no response. Well, what happened? Like, weren't they checking in with you? Well, no. Once they got me the job, yeah, I didn't
Mhm.
hear from them again. And I'm like, yeah. So that's why our industry, we take arrows because stuff like that happens. But anyway,
I
yeah,
think you bring up a good point in general, whether it's an agency recruiter, an internal talent acquisition,
yeah,
or the hiring manager. When you've got a new hire on board, it's so important to build that relationship because it doesn't exist yet. Yeah, you may have a team of 6 and 4 of those people have been with you for 10 years. So you've got a good rhythm, got a good read on each other. But when a new person comes in, it changes the dynamic overall. And so often we see with organizations that the first week or so that a person is being onboarded, it's all very connected and yay and happy. And, they'll take you to lunch and show you your office and make sure you've got everything that you need. But then by day 6,
hmm,
here's this new person, not sure quite what their role is yet because it takes some time to really, what your job description is, but to really understand how your role fits within a department and within an organization can take some time.
yeah,
So I think this is my plug for organizations is please don't stop with the onboarding after the first week. Please take extra care with those new employees and make it an open conversation so that in 4 months, if things aren't going as they expected, they've got somewhere to go because otherwise recruiters like Ryan are looking for your people.
right, right. That's right. That's
And I say that lightheartedly,
yeah,
but with the economy being as it is right now, people don't have to stay at
no.
jobs where they aren't feeling valued and are not feeling like they can express their concerns or ask the questions as they have.
That's a great point because I get this a lot too. I tell job seekers there must have been some kind of, oh, I don't know, for years and years, the thought, well, if I take a new job, I should stay for a year before I think about moving. Like, what arbitrary, some little job fairy jumped on his shoulder, stay for 1 year and then
Mhm.
you can look around. No, I tell people, like, you cannot stay in a situation for your mental health, at the very least, that you do not feel like you should be in.
Mhm.
That could be a week. That could be, a year, 2 years, 6 months, whatever. So don't listen to somebody who tells you you should stick it out for X amount of time. It's really okay. And, as a recruiter, you need to ask hard questions about it too, right? And a lot of times it comes back to, like you just talked about, this open dialogue, especially with the hiring manager, the supervisor. You know, have you expressed these thoughts? A lot of times it's, I have not. And I understand it
Mhm.
can be very difficult when you're a new hire. Like you said, you're just getting used to the bathroom's over there and the kitchen's over there. And wow. But you really need to have it. And the companies that I work with that get it, like, here's a good example. When I talk to a candidate who says, from the time they start through 2 years down the line, or sometimes more than that, is when they tell me, Ryan, it was as it was advertised in the interview and even better. Tell me, what do you mean
Yeah.
by that? Okay, I'll tell you why. Because not only has the hiring manager actively built into her or his reason to be there, part of that big reason is to train up staff, is to elevate and
Mhm.
help promote people's growth, right? Well, there's that element, which is great because not all not all hire managers even bother. Like you said, here's your desk. There's IT over there. God be with you. But it's not just the hiring manager. What I generally hear is even people outside of the department, right? Not even in finance, but other people, sometimes leadership, often leadership or managers, will come and make time to ask this new employee, even 6 months or a year, how do you like working here? Yeah. Oh, okay, cool. Oh, cool. Do you have any questions for me? How can I help you? And that's coming not just only from internal accounting, but marketing, sales, operations. These people, they get it. So it's holistic within the company.
Mhm.
It's not easy to do, but companies that are successful, I think, and definitely successful at retaining employees, they're doing that. They're doing that. So, yeah.
Excellent. Well, Ryan Morrison, it has been a pleasure talking with you today. I've appreciated your insights. How are you listed on LinkedIn so that people can find you if they have need for an agency recruiter?
Ryan Morrison, accounting and finance recruiter in Chicago. I'll just kind of leave it right there. You can find me pretty easy though. Yeah.
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 Great. Well,
Cool.
thank you again, Ryan. It was a pleasure to
Yeah.
talk with you.
Stacy, my pleasure. And everybody there too. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. And so with your help, we can get this message to more people. Subscribe, rate, and review the show, and be a part of making a difference, because it starts with you.